Hi there everybody, this is Pastor Charlie. I'm here with a midweek reflection for you. This is, of course, the week leading up to March 17th, and known across the world as St. Patrick's Day, when we celebrate the patron saint of Ireland. You would think that I would know a thing or two about that. And I do. I've been doing some studying this week. St. Patrick's Day is going to fall on a Sunday, and I'll definitely be including Patrick's story and bits and pieces of it in my sermon this coming Sunday morning. So I thought I'd share some of the bits and pieces that I've been learning as I've been doing my studying this week in preparation for that sermon. There's an awful lot about Patrick that we think we know. Most of it is actually made up. Okay, so obviously that stuff about him chasing snakes, that's it's just not true. It's just made up. It's a rumour that's found its way somewhere and has been passed on, hopefully as a joke, throughout all the days of our lives. Then there's these other bits and pieces of writing that have been attributed to Patrick, but really aren't anything to do with him at all. They are sourced much later after Patrick's life in the 5th century. But there are a few pieces that we do know Patrick wrote himself. And one of those I was reading today as I was getting ready for Sunday. And it's a document called Patrick's Confession. The bishops of the church in England had been complaining about the work that Patrick was doing over in Ireland. And so to defend himself, he sat down and wrote this confession. Now, Patrick was a very simple person, really wasn't, fully educated in theology. He didn't have an MDiv or a doctorate or anything like that. He simply had a heart that was captivated by his encounter with Christ. And in his confession, he tells the story of his conversion, of how he had ignored God in his young life, but then he had this deep experience of the mercy of God. And as he experienced God's mercy, it then had a transformative impact on his entire life, to the point where he gave himself entirely to God's work. He gave himself to returning to Ireland and to joining in the mission of God on the island of Ireland and really sharing the gospel. One of the first people, if not the first, to evangelize the people of Ireland with the good news of Jesus Christ. The reason I want to share that with you today is I just want to invite you, friends, to stop for a second in the middle of this devotion or just after it and just reflect on the mercy of God in your life. As I read that today, I was thinking about God's mercy and grace and poured out into my life, and I was just staggered by it. God knows us completely. God knows the hairs on our head. God knows all of the days of our lives. God knows our coming and our going. He knows every thought that goes through us, and yet still loves us completely with an unconditional, unbreakable, everlasting love. And that love of God, that steadfast love of God, is what leads God to pour God's mercy and grace out upon humanity. So I just want to invite you to sit with that for a second today, to bathe in it almost, to enjoy it. God's grace and mercy are poured out on your life. And that's good news for you today, and it's good news for all of us today. One of the other things that Patrick is said to have written is what's known as St. Patrick's breastplate. And it's a collection of prayers. It's a long-form prayer that Patrick writes really about the presence of God in his life. And as he gets to the end of that prayer, he has a number of statements about the presence of Christ with him. Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ to my left, Christ to my right, Christ above me, Christ below me, Christ within me, Christ in the heart of everybody that I meet on this day. He had this awareness that Christ was present with him all the time. And so not only do I invite you to bathe in the grace of God today, I invite you to again, bathe yourself in that truth that wherever you go, God's going before you. There's nowhere you can go today to get out of the presence of Christ. And again, that is great news. So friends, go into this day knowing that Christ goes with you. Go into this day knowing that you're beloved of God and that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, and it has poured out God's mercy and grace upon you. Enjoy all of that this day. Take care, and I'll see you soon.